He is he's on my left-hand side here. He has an Italian name, but he's Belgian, and he works for UNEP. He's the Deputy Director for Ecosystem Services. So that's very relevant to peatlands. And he will give us an overview where we are. What is the importance of peatlands today for climate, for people, and for biodiversity. So can I give you the floor, Bruno, to start off? Thank you.
You may. And I don't know if am I using this? Yeah, it seems to work. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining this session. And indeed, Han, thanks for the introduction. And you started by saying, yeah, a few years ago we would have a very boring session. We won't have a boring session because first we are in the middle of the climate crisis, and we know that it's here. It's getting to us faster than ever. And in fact, if you take the 3 reports that UNEP, not on peatlands, but on other matters, has released, the adaptation gap report, the emission gap report, and the production gap report, we see that we are totally out of really tackling the challenge. We're not on the right trajectory. Greenhouse gas emissions have risen by 1.2% compared to last year. NDCs, as they currently are, will lead us to a trajectory of 2.5, 2.9 degrees, and we need much stronger NDCs commitments and much stronger commitments from governments and from all stakeholders. So in this, peatlands play a role, and I've got a beautiful sentence on my screen that says, peatlands matter, and I think they really do. Peatlands matter for the climate, they matter for the biodiversity, and they matter for the future of our planet. It's only a small portion of our planet, as we know, 3 to 4% of the land, but they store twice as much carbon as all the world's forests combined. And so keeping the carbon locked away in healthy peatlands, restoring and re-wetting those that we have damaged or destroyed is absolutely critical if we want to achieve our climate goals. And we won't be able to tackle the climate crisis if we don't invest in peatlands and if we don't shift the way we consider peatlands and value them globally. This being said, we know, and we'll have, I think, the state-of-the-art science on this, wetlands, peatlands are lost at alarming rates. We see that the coverage is reducing year after year. And if the world has any hope, indeed, to be in a world where it's 1.5, maybe under 2 degrees, we need this urgent action. Repairing the already degraded peatlands means a lot of investments, and it means that we need to emphasize to the world that they offer services. They are good for the economy, they are good for societies, they are good for livelihoods, and they are good also to adapt to climate change. This phenomenon that climate change is going to bring of more water somewhere, less water somewhere, the cycle of water, the cycle of floods and drought, well, peatlands are a perfect tool as well to respond to this and to manage the water cycle in a much better way. And so what we are calling for with the wording that peatlands matter for our planet, it's a global scale action. And we've launched the Global Peatlands Initiative, which was formed already in 2016. So that's also showing how many miles we've already taken and how important the call for action on peatlands has moved. It started with 13 members. It was funded by incl, our German partners, and it has grown today to 55 organizations. And it's covering the 4 major tropical peatland countries, Indonesia, the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Peru. And the initiative has been working with international partners to demonstrate results and impact built on the experience and approaches that exist around the world for peatlands, but bringing these approaches into a science to policy corpus demonstrating that innovation and finance can be put together to save our peatlands. So we work with the Global Peatlands Initiative hand in hand with countries to help them make well-informed decisions, basically, on how to manage their peatlands, on how to take the right policy options that will minimize the impact on the peatlands, on the people, and on the environment, but also bring these social and climate benefits that peatlands are bringing. With the initiative, we generate knowledge, we share the knowledge, we share the experience across the global networks, and we connect practitioners, scientists, and investors around these policy decisions. This is all good, but I think we need to accelerate now. We need to go even further with the initiatives so that we, with the real tangible results that we have brought, we see more collaboration among stakeholders. We put peatlands really high on the agenda of our societies, and we make decision makers at all levels and society and all stakeholders understand that, yes, it's not the same piece of land as another piece of land. It is a very different one. It is one that is essential, as I said, to get the result of the Paris Agreement, but is also essential, and that's the ecosystem in me, to preserve the biodiversity, to preserve really the unique number of species that exist, sorry about that, that exist in peatland areas. So if we're serious about taking climate action, we must be serious about protecting, restoring, managing in a sustainable way our peatlands. And with this, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruno. That was really a good overview, a good start of this meeting. I'm welcoming some more people who came in. Very nice. So this is a good warm-up for the next speaker, Franziska Tannenberger. She's from the Greifswald Mire Centre. And for those who don't know, the Greifswald Mire Centre brings together a great number of scientists researching peat and digging deeper, so to speak, in the peats. And you can, if for those who have tried this, you can go really deep into peats if you like. And I think that's exactly what we need. So Franziska, tell us more where we are. What is the state of science at this moment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome from me also to those joining online. I think we are online and we have many more people joining online. I'm very pleased to inform you a bit about actually a key product on peatlands. We move on. Now, that is the Global Peatlands Assessment, and we launched it last year in Sharm el-Sheikh. So it's not the launch of it. It's 1 year old already, but it's still very, very valid. And I invite you all to have a look at the website, to download it and to dive into this assessment. It has been compiled by a large number of scientists, peatland people. So you can see it here, 226 contributors. Some of them are here. I see at least Faisal in the first row sitting as one of the co-authors and instrumental people in it, but many more, and also I believe some of them online. 51 countries were involved, and we produced continent-wise chapters for all the peatlands globally, and it was the first assessment of this kind. A few figures for you, just to really open the agenda for peatlands now. We have almost 500 million hectares of peatland globally, and we estimate that 600 billion tons of carbon are at the moment locked in these soils. And I mean, it's very clear they can either be released or they can stay there, and it's up to us as people what happens to these peatlands in future. The largest peatland countries you can see here, Russian Federation, and we have many participants here in the audience, is the largest peatland country, so to speak. We have Canada, then we have the United States, Brazil, we have Indonesia also present here with many participants. DRC, Republic of Congo, again, I believe in our audience here, Finland and Peru, just by the number of area they have. And then, I mean, the good news on the one hand side is 88% of this area is still undrained. So these peatlands are still healthy, they sequester carbon, they regulate the landscape water balance, they provide a lot of ecosystem services to us, and many of it simply unnoticed by us. And then 12% are degraded and they are losing peat all the time. So all around the world we have right now peatlands being drained and losing CO2, losing peat. And it's very unevenly distributed. So Europe is really worst in this regard. So about half of the peatlands in Europe have been drained across all European countries, and then it's much less in Asia and in the other regions globally, luckily, but there's also a lot of land use pressure on these areas, as you know. Last year we also showed this peatland map 2.0. We are working long-term on these peatland maps. The first of this global peatland maps was actually released in Glasgow at COP26, and we had it hanging around the peatland pavilion, which was very nice because many delegates actually passed by and searched for their peatlands on the map. So it's a composite map of more than 200 single data sets that have been compiled. It shows global peatlands, including organic soils, shallow peatlands, which are also important, also in terms of emissions, and it's supplemented by own mapping to improve the maps and a lot of quality checking. And just a few examples how tropical peatlands can look like. They are very, very diverse, and we believe that we cover at least indicative also the subtropics and southern hemisphere, but there's still a lot of peatland to discover, so to say. So we check the data sets with respect to accuracy, completeness, plausibility, and we try to maintain a high level of transparency also. And this global peatland map is being published and made available in the coming weeks. We are here at the climate conference, so we have to look at the emissions released from these soils. And this map now indicates the countries with the largest amount of greenhouse gas emissions in megatons CO2 equivalents per year. And the more purple colors and the red colors are the countries that matter most on a global scale. Every year we have around 2 billion tons CO2 equivalents released from drained peatlands, and the biggest emitters are also here. It's, again, Indonesia and Russia already mentioned, but also the European Union. And I mean, I always like to blame my country first, and Germany is one of the countries with highest emissions. The Global Peatlands Assessment also revealed that some 500,000 hectares of healthy peatlands are lost annually due to drainage. And this is really, I mean, we are looking for technical solutions now for CCS and all this stuff. At the same time, we do drain peatlands and we lose an active carbon sink on our globe. So this is in a way ridiculous and we should stop it. And we need more attention on NDCs, on peatlands in the NDCs. Another nice product actually I wanted to inform you about is a peatland atlas that appeared last year, and there are a lot of copies around. All the infographics are open source and available. And for example, this is an example also to shed some positive light on it. I mean, Indonesia is a country very active, and maybe the most active country in terms of peatland restoration. So there are a lot of targets for different regions in Indonesia, and we tried, for example, with co-authors from there to put a spotlight on this. Coming soon, another important source of information on peatlands is a global hotspot atlas for peatlands. And in this atlas, we are combining now the peatland layer and other thematic layers. For example, cropland on peatlands. Where do we actually have the cropland on peat soils with very high emissions? So this map indicates already here Europe comes very clearly out, but also, I mean, Southeast Asia and other parts, North America does have a lot of cropland on peat soils as well. So a lot of informative maps coming up. Another map here, high altitude peatlands. They are also very, very important, also in terms of the water cycle, for example, and also pretty threatened, also by climate change. This is a map now indicating, for example, in red, these are the peatlands above 2,000 meters above sea level. And then peatlands and protected areas. We do have protected areas, including peatlands. We have to state at the same time, it's often that they do not appropriately protect the peatlands. They are maybe just, they happen to be there, but they are not the target of the protection. But this is also a map indicating in yellow, actually, peatlands within protected areas. There is not so much yellow on the map. You may notice in red, peatlands outside protected areas. So a much larger proportion is actually outside. To sum up some of the key recommendations from the global peatlands assessments, and I mean this has been brought together by these more than 200 peatland scientists and peatland conservationists worldwide. We need to phase out harmful operations on peat soils and revet them by strengthening regulation and creating subsidies and also fiscal mechanisms for these lands. It's very important to develop and also maintain on a long term data systems on peatland extent, peatland uses, and greenhouse gas emissions, also emission factors that are needed to assess them appropriately, including, hopefully, something like a global peatlands inventory, which we do not have at the moment. We also think, and all these authors together saw that if it's important to form a fair and transparent governance system that cross sectors and empowers stewardship also by indigenous peoples and local communities. It's very much that the local communities matter with respect to land use on peatlands. The GPI was mentioned already by Bruno. I mean, we need to support collaboration and engage in international networks and initiatives, and the Global Peatlands Initiative is, I mean, the initiative to be there if you think about peatlands on a global scale. It's also an invitation to a lot of organizations to join. And last but not least, it's of course about finance. And there is a lot of attention now on blending public and private funding for greater scale and speed of peatland conservation and restoration, because this is what is needed. And I'd also like to point on one recent data set from European Union countries on the right-hand side. And this is really, in a way, shocking for if you look at it. On the blue bars, that is the forest sink that we do have in these European countries. And there are several countries like Finland, Germany, Poland, Norway. And then the red bar is the peat soil emissions. And if you look at these two bars, in many of our countries, we do not have a sink. We do not have, LULUCF is not a sink. It is a source of emissions. And this also means, of course, that we have to go to zero in all other sectors, and we also have to bring this sector to zero. And this is a big challenge, but we have also a lot of ideas, I would say, how to tackle it. And my last slide is an advertisement now for the virtual peatland pavilion. This was started, and especially Richard Lindsay from University of East London was instrumental in setting it up. It was started in Glasgow at COP26. It's a virtual open space for bringing together peatland information, also artwork about peatlands and various stuff. And it has been now modified again, and it has been now improved and updated, and it's in a way also bridging between the climate conferences to bring together peatland information. So please have a look at the Peatland Pavilion 2.0, which is online, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Francisca, for digging a bit deeper. So this is the state of the art, which is actually quite compelling and quite important. Can you hear me well? You need to have a little bit more volume. Okay, like this? Okay. Maybe a question to start with, and I will, soon after that, we'll gather questions from the audience. So please bring forward your questions or remarks, because there are many experts also on this side of the table. Do we actually, it gives me the feeling we are doing recent discoveries. Is that the case? And are we still discovering actually? Is this map, will this map be different in maybe 5 years?
It was, I think, known to a very small number of people previously. And so it was a very small circle of peatland enthusiasts, scientists, conservationists, and I mean, now we are jointly making the discoveries, and this is what is needed, because it doesn't really help if a few peatland people know about it and the rest of the world not. So that's why it's very important, and in a way it is new discoveries, but the underlying data is not fully new.
Yeah. So there's small circles who knew about this. Yeah. Well, you're part of that group now. Which is quite a privilege. Yeah. Can I give someone the floor who's in this audience? Yes. Okay, ladies first. Yes. Can you introduce yourself and pose your question? Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Romanovska. I'm from Russian Federation. So Thank you very much for the presentation. I think that's very interesting, and for the atlas and map. I'm in charge of Russian greenhouse gas inventory. And so my question related to that. What are the source of data for peatland area and distribution, and especially drained peatland area? Because that is really a challenge to know the drained peatland and distribution, spatial distribution of this area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for the underlying data set on peatland distribution for the Russian Federation, we worked intensively with Andrei Zirin from the Academy of Sciences, who unfortunately passed recently. And for the land use, I mean, I believe that it was also in direct exchange with him, for example, on land use data, but there are also global data sets. And I mean, remote sensing is increasingly able to provide good land use information. So I think there's also a lot of, I mean, this is clearly an area where we make new discoveries, that we have new monitoring methods for it.
Thank you. The gentleman there, thank you. Yeah.
Hello, Corey Dahl from the Government of Northwest Territories in Canada. I just noticed there wasn't a lot of mention of peatlands within the melting permafrost zone, and wondering if there's any reason for that.
No. Could you just repeat, it was not mentioned?
I didn't hear mention of like peatlands within melting permafrost zones.
It is an issue. So I think there was in one of the Frontiers publications of UNEP, there was a few years ago already something like emerging issues, permafrost and peatlands. That is clearly an issue. I just, for time reasons, didn't cover it here, but it is an issue. Yeah.
The gentleman over there. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I'm Daniel Zimmer from Climate Kick. Quick question: what is the gap between the 2 billion emissions that you have identified and what is reported by the countries? Do we have an idea of this gap?
So I personally do have an idea for the European Union. Again, I mean, blaming the own countries first and looking at it with more detail. So 2 years ago, we made a study to compare the official greenhouse gas reporting for European Union countries and data from our database and most recent emission factors from the IPCC wetland supplement. And we discovered a gap of 70 megatons for all European Union countries together. I believe this has been reduced a bit meanwhile because countries continuously improve. For countries outside Europe, I cannot tell at the moment. But there is clearly potential under-reporting, I would say.
Yes, Bruno.
If I just want to add, and that's actually, I mean, what we are really pushing as well. And I was talking about the ambition to put peatlands in the NDCs, to really have NDCs that take into account the potential, and not only the potential, but the reality of peatlands as carbon sinks. And it's really with initiatives like Global Peatland Initiative, with the Global Peatland Assessment, really pushing government to understand the issue, get the science together and really better evaluate what it means. Because once you've got the data, once you understand the reality of peatlands, then you do take action to really protect this area or re-wet them, put them back into a state where they become a nature-based solution.
Well, we are at an event now where this actually hopefully happens, right? That we make that connections also in the negotiating sessions. Do you have any view on where we are there? Is there something we can do?
Well, I think it's just as you said. I mean, we're bringing the message out. Well, now, is it being heard fully? Probably not yet enough, in my view. And so this community of practice that we're building needs to increase and needs to be even more present. So yeah, the message to everyone in the room is bring the message out as well. Use the science that we've gathered in things like in reports like the Global Peatlands Assessment, so that decisions, informed decisions, can be taken. We're still there, sadly.
Yeah. And is there already any guidance so that countries are guided towards putting water systems such as peatlands in their NDCs, as far as we know?
I think there are a few good examples. As I recall, especially some African countries actually who do include peatlands very nicely in their NDCs. And I also believe that FAO has worked on this topic, also on assessing the state in the NDCs.
No. I see many fingers. It's high time to go to that corner. Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie Klein from the Suez Group. We are developing a biochar activity. So biochar is a carbon sink, as you know. And biochar is also a material that can be used instead of other materials, such as, for example, peat. So I would like to know which are the main uses of peat in Europe, for example, and in Canada. Why are the peat used for?
And Suez Group is a waste processor, right?
Suez Group is a waste processor, a water and wastewater processor too, and now a climate player too, with the biochar activity I'm representing today. So yeah, so we are thinking about using biochar instead of peat for substrate soils. You know that peat is of course used for plant nurseries, to forestry and so on, and we are thinking about using biochar instead of it. We know that it's not possible to replace all the peat by biochar because they don't have the same characteristic for the plant nurseries, but a part of it could be. Yeah. And I would like to know if there are other markets that are using peat that could be replaced by biochar.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe briefly. So biochar can, I think, substitute a part of the peat that is extracted. But most peat users for horticulture insist that they need the properties of peat mosses. And then the solution is really to cultivate peat mosses on revetted peatlands. And this is feasible. We have such examples in the Netherlands. In Germany, for example, the largest site is now 17 hectares. It's, of course, another effort instead of going to a country just extracting the peat. But it's the way forward, I would say, to revet and then cultivate sphagnum moss as a substrate. And globally, I mean, in terms of the relevance, agriculture and forestry are clearly more relevant on drained peat soils compared to extraction.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In fact, I was looking for the...
Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry. This is Jakir. I'm a farmer from Bangladesh, and here I represent a farmer's constituency.
Thank you.
And Bangladesh has more than 100,000 hectares of peatland, and we found that it is from surface up to down to 15 to 20 feet. So it is huge, but our government is something reluctant to include it or something else. But my question is, does only country party can forward the list to the global database, or we CSO who are conscious and who are working, however small, initiative to rejuvenate the peatland, which has been being destroyed from development side effects. So can CSOs, as we can forward the database with scientific evidence and all the data from the field and from the satellites?
That's a very good point, because we're not talking only about the big emitters and the big, but also the smaller ones, and your figures are still considerable, I think. And we need to get this picture complete, because for every hectare we take action, we really make a big contribution. Yeah, okay, that's a very good point. Yes, please.
Faisal Parish, Global Environment Centre from Malaysia. Thank you for the presentation, Francisca. I think a couple of things I'd like to highlight from our experience from Southeast Asia. One, peatlands are not adequately incorporated into the NDCs. And one of the reasons is that the peat emissions data in emissions reporting, such as the BUR, is sometimes buried, it is, according to reporting format, buried into the LULUCF data. And even though the main reason for emission is agricultural drainage, it does not appear in the agriculture box. So the agriculture ministry say, emission is very small according to the official report, because the agriculture section only deals with the methane and N2O. And the massive emission of CO2 is buried and lost in the net figures, and all the reports often just say, oh, we are a massive forest sink, and mention nothing about the massive emission. I believe that's the case for a number of other countries like the US. I remember someone commenting earlier that the major emission in the US is agricultural drainage of organic soils, but it's lost in the net LULUCF figures. And I think this is something it's important maybe in future documents, like you contrasted the uptake of forest and the emission of peat. I think that's a very important way to do that. And I think it's very important to put the spotlight on those critical countries. You listed the 10 of the larger emitters to look specifically at those, how to incorporate. There has been very good work, recent work in Indonesia, as you highlighted, but that needs to spread to other countries to recognize and to get the countries to really incorporate it into the NDC processes. But maybe you can comment about you mentioned some future products, additional hotspot atlas or other things. Will those elaborate on these matters? Thank you.
Yeah, very briefly, because we have still many comments.
Yeah,
I think we will try and putting together forest, the LULUCF in the both sides of it is key, and I take it also as an encouragement to include in the hotspot atlas actually such a figure.
Yeah. Bruno, any idea how we can make this more visible in the policy area as well, and in the climate negotiations?
Yeah, I think, and you hint to this, there are further products to be developed. So I think we, as UNEP and with partners who are in this, we really want to continue the work and get partners to support the work further on peatlands, because a lot of data is still missing. Or if it's not missing, or it's there, but it's not clearly expressed in the way climate negotiators need it or would understand it. So there is an extra effort to be done by organizations and partners to get the product where it should be. I agree with you.
Thank you. Joker. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yarkar Damalana with the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands. And actually building very much on what Faisal just mentioned here is, in 2018 at the Conference of the Parties of the Convention on Wetlands, there's a resolution that encourages parties to further develop wetland inventories in order to enable greater incorporation of wetlands action, specifically peatlands, into NDCs. That was 2018, and that were 171 parties to the convention adopting that resolution. I think last year at the Sharm COP, when we looked at the status of incorporation of peatlands into NDCs, 13% of the countries that have peatlands have actually mentioned peatlands within their NDCs. So within that time span, meager progress, and today if you look at it, and I think this is preliminary figures from colleagues at FAO, but that number hasn't moved. And in fact, and let alone concrete emission reduction targets or really concrete actions in terms of spatial extent. So clearly there's a very big gap. And so we do have a policy recognition on one level. We see moderate traction in the space where it really is needed. So some of the comments made just now, I think, really speak to what is required, what are the actions, and how do countries get the support they need and the awareness they need in the right place to actually do this. Do we need more guidance? Presumably so. Do we need a lot more data? Yes, but there's an abundance that can be done on the data that does exist, even with default emission factors. And maybe my appeal is to all those entities that support countries concretely in their NBSAPs, in their NDCs, in their land degradation plans, to actually get very concrete and specific about this. So that is where how should I say, a great opportunity lies in actually moving the needle. So at the end of the first cycle of the GST, this is where we are. Will the findings of the GST actually help us move this forward? So when we come back at a later stage at the end of the second GST, we can really say that has moved.
Thank you. Maybe can I push this a little bit further, because it seems that we're getting more knowledge, more awareness on the subject, but that it only helps a little bit, to put it really the item on the international and the local agenda. So apart from being aware and being knowledgeable and knowing what to do? Is there also a matter of resistance? Are there good reasons, or maybe not so good reasons, not to do this?
Let's say there are no, let's take the very optimist way that there are no bad reasons, but only a lack of understanding. I think we could push a number of stakeholders and countries to put peatlands in their restoration targets, in their land use targets. If we can really look at it from one of the nature-based solutions that needs investment in not only for mitigation but for also adaptation, the role of peatlands in the water cycle. I mean, all these things I think can really bring us to the investment needed to restore these peatlands, save these peatlands, and get them really well understood. So let's not look at bad reasons. I think just be very optimistic as usual.
I like your optimism. Thank you. One last question for this round to the audience, and later this afternoon you have more opportunities. The gentleman there.
Thank you for the time. My name is Askari from Indonesia. So I just want to raise the following question by Pak Faisal. So basically that one of the challenges that we have so far, how to have an agreed methodology or the emission factors regarding how to calculate or measure on the emission reduction, particularly in the relation between the groundwater level and also that the emission of the CO2 or other greenhouse gas emission. So by this, I would like to invite everybody to come to this Indonesian pavilion by this 6 o'clock in this afternoon if you would like to see the tier 3. So this is the latest technology about this relation. But my question thank you for the very good presentation. Is there any latest technology just to predict about the peatland thickness? Because in our country, we do it in the traditional way. I mean, do the boring every 500 meters. Huge effort that we have done so far. Yeah. 14.9 million hectares that we have done that every 500 meters. Wow. This is a huge inventory that we have done so far. But I would like to know if there's a viable technology to do so. Thank you very much.
Can we make the gentleman's life a little bit easier?
I think the Indonesians do know a lot about all these technologies already, and you're very much on the front of developing also a lot of this, also with the Indonesian Peat Prize and bringing together groups working in remote sensing. I'm personally not a specialist on tropical peatlands and these measurements. I hope that this can be brought forward now. And what I was just thinking when you mentioned this, we do have the IPCC wetland supplement, and I think it was 2013-14. Maybe we should also say today there is a need for an update for it, and we need to also encourage IPCC to work again on it.
Thank you. Well, this brings us to a close of the first part of this meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you, Francisca and Bruno. You showed us peat is an important problem to look at, but it's also a very big part of the solution, so that's very helpful. The gentleman made a little commercial break for the Indonesian pavilion. I would like to draw your attention to another event tomorrow morning at 10. We'll look at the interface of agriculture, climate and food, and there also there will be a call for attention to this for peatlands. So for those who are interested, please join us tomorrow again. But before we do so, we have a very nice lineup of speakers under the leadership of my colleague, Amy. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for that first half of the session, which very nicely set the stage to the global context and the latest science on peatlands. I'm Amy Duchel, Senior Forestry Officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, FAO, and leading the Forest and Climate team. And I'm here today representing our peatlands group. They're online, and I'd like to acknowledge Maria Newtonen, Elizabeth Ram Beltran, and Laura Villegas, who have worked hard on FAO's peatlands work under the leadership of Maria Newtonen since 2011, supporting countries on technical assistance and improved management and monitoring of peatlands. So just hi everyone, they're online and joining. It's great to see a full room today, and now we get to delve into the details of the country level. And this is on the ground examples, so this is quite exciting. We've just heard from our Indonesian colleagues that unfortunately Pak Alu Dohong, Vice Minister of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, is tied up in the negotiations, so he won't be able to join us today. His colleagues are in the audience, but we won't be able to hear from Pak Aloy today. But we do have others here, and we can get started. So first, I would like to start with our colleague from Uganda, Mr. Alfred Okot Okidi, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Water and Environment, a position that he's held since 2016. He's the focal point for the UNFCCC for Uganda and has been instrumental in the development of key legislation in the water and environmental sector. Sir, the floor is yours to tell us about your peatlands experience.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for giving Uganda the opportunity to share. Peatland is relatively young in terms of knowledge for us in Uganda. And we have fairly limited knowledge and data about it to begin with. And in terms of really the practices that we are looking at, we have integrated peatland into our NDC, but without the detailed quantification. And the focus is to ensure the restoration of the peatlands, because we realize that it has a very strong ecological and biodiversity support that it provides, in addition to carbon sequestration. So in that aspect, we have it, and it is a priority in terms of our restoration. But also we are now engaging with the communities especially, so that they appreciate the value of peatland. And unlike other natural resources we have in the country, peatland is, most of it is underground, so it's not seen, so it is not felt like the swamps and the forests. And therefore we are engaging the community so that they appreciate their importance, and we have also embarked on demarcation so that the community is actually aware and they engage in sustainable practices around peatlands. But also we are working with the academia so that we deepen our knowledge, and we have some research ongoing, and it will also help us with measures of how to tackle degradation of the peatland. But most importantly, we need monitoring and research, and we do regularly assess them, but at basic level, and there is certainly need to integrate it in terms of the landscape, in terms of the water levels, the carbon storage, and these are areas that we are now working on with the academic institution to deepen the knowledge, also together with the development partners, especially GIZ. I think, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and we will get back to you to delve into some of those details. So I would like to now turn to Mr. Alexander Bond, Secretary General of the German Federal Environmental Foundation, a former member of the German Parliament and Minister of Rural Areas and Consumer Protection for the German state of Baden-Württemberg. Over to you, sir.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, honorable party members, thank you for the possibility to speak today. As we have already heard today, the potential and the need for nature-based solutions such as peatlands is greater than ever, and we had the opportunity to learn today about the tremendous efforts of different nations. Following this, I wish to give a small insight on how civil society can provide important impetus in the policy advocacy and the process of scaling up peatland restoration, a very important issue for us in the European Union, and I will give you a little insight on the German debate and the situation in Germany. It is clear we need determined action by national and European actors in order to scale up nature-based solutions and the restoration of peatlands. So who are we? The German Federal Environmental Foundation is a funding foundation. We fund innovative, exemplary and solution-oriented projects for the protection of the environment. We initiate green tech innovation, and our special focus is on small and medium-sized enterprises and green startups, and we also support conservation of nature. All that we do in Germany and in Middle Eastern Europe. But coming back to peatlands, the situation in Germany is today, peatlands cover 5% of the land area, but the situation is dire. Around 95% of German peat soils are drained. Most are used for agriculture or forestry. Degraded peatlands emit 53 million tons of CO2 equivalent per year, almost 7% of total Germany's national greenhouse gas emissions. Considering this, decisive action is required to return to a healthy state in the peatlands. Besides, state actors, foundations and civil society actors are key in facilitating this development. For us, we are supporting projects on this matter. On the one hand, we fund projects both on the communication side, like stakeholder dialogues for peatlands, and on the technical side, methods for improved peatland restoration. One important point I want to highlight is the potential of paludiculture, meaning the production of biomass on wet, and in our case, especially on re-wetted peatland sites. The German-based foundations Umweltstiftung Michael Otto and the Succow Foundation have started the so-called Tomorrow Initiative. Their aims, among other goals, is to set up value chains for paludiculture, for example, as source for packaging materials. This is a very important step. One key learning for us as a foundation has always been setting up solutions so that not only nature, but also economy and the people will profit from it. At the same time, we as a foundation, we are directly involved in restoring peatlands. We as a foundation, we own 70,000 hectares, a large part of the German national natural heritage. And on a lot of those properties, there are drained peatlands. We want to change that and revitalize these areas in areas like the Daubaner Wald in Saxony, Gelbensander Forst in Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, and Weishaus in Brandenburg. We are in the middle of the rewetting process. Financing is not easy, even for a big foundation as ours, and in order to increase the restoration of peatlands, we are partnering with the state. We are partnering also with other foundations and people from the areas. But in general, we also need long-term support through state programs, especially for peatlands currently used for agriculture. We need both practical and financial solutions that support biodiversity, climate, and agricultural business reliant on those stretches of land. Paludiculture can be such a solution. It can play an important part under the right parameters. Many civil society actors are continuously working on advocating peatland restoration and the support of scaling up solutions. This includes building networks and alliances of willing actors and advocating for new financing, for faster implementation and for scaling up. In June this year, together with the Greifswald Mire Centre, we hosted a nationwide conference on the acceleration of peatland restoration in Germany, calling on state actors to act, highlighting problems with current regulation and financing, but especially for sharing working practices and for sharing those examples where the rewetting processes are already going well. Additionally, we have honored those who have tirelessly worked promoting peatlands in Germany. Each year we award the German Environmental Award. It's one of Europe's most highly remunerated environmental award, regularly awarded by the Federal President of Germany. And in the past years, renowned peatland researchers and activists like Michael Succow and Hans Josten has received the prize, drawing national attention on their work and on the importance of peatland restoration. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we need urgent action, and we need it fast, especially for degraded peatlands, which are part of forestry and agriculture. What we need is to set up frameworks in which measures are financially rewarded and which are benefiting the restoration and care of the peatlands. We all know this is a huge task, but in conclusion, allow me to put it this way. Actually, it's quite simple. All that it needs is to set it up right so that all actors, that agriculture, biodiversity, climate, and people can profit as a result. Peatlands have a huge perspective to be part of the solutions we are all looking for. And civil society has an important role on that way. It can be facilitator for innovations, for cooperation, and for solutions. So thank you very much for sharing all this with you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Bones, and very interesting, and we'll get back to you to delve in more. I would like to now turn over to Dr. Femke Tunik, the Director of Program Impact at Wetlands International. Femke has over 23 years of experience and 12 with Wetlands International, so look forward to hearing about the work that you're doing on the ground. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's fantastic to be here today with so many country delegates and other people that are enthusiastic about peatlands or about to become enthusiastic about peatlands. I'm going to share a few slides, if it's all set. Yeah. How can we reach impact at scale? What is the importance of finance and community engagement? I'm trying to put a few thoughts on the table, but we definitely need to discuss this further with all of us because each of us holds a piece of the puzzle. But first of all, just to repeat these astonishing figures, I mean, 3% of the Earth's land surface, 2 times more carbon than forests globally, 5% of global emissions caused by peat drainage. That's really phenomenal. I mean, aviation and shipping combined is also about 5%. And we know now where these peatlands are. We know what to do. We have solutions. So let's get re-wetting. And I think as Wetlands International, we have been really working very hard on a mangrove breakthrough, a freshwater challenge. So where is the peatland push? Let's go for it. Ingredients of success, I think we all know them. It's the knowledge that is available in an easily accessible way, like Greifswald Mire Centre and others have been working on. Also, of course, champions like Indonesia. As Wetlands International has been a long-standing partner of many of the countries that are here today. Buy-in of government and communities, of course, but also short and long-term finance. In terms of knowledge, it's really important to know and understand where are the peatlands, what causes their degradation, so that we can address the root causes. How can we restore them and make this all accessible to practitioners? And yes, it's sort of tempting to go for a new update of the IPCC methodologies, but we can easily be sidetracked by it. It can easily take us another 5 years, and we already know so much, so let's get cracking. And also, I think what is really interesting here is that we can also learn across country. We are working with the government of Uganda since very recently with our director, Julie Mulonga, who's in the audience. We have been working a long time with Indonesia, in India. We are also embarking on peatland mapping. Let's exchange, because there's so much knowledge out there already. Buy-in from governments and communities. Government can enable land use change and de-risk investments by creating a level playing field and clear rules, committing to peatland restoration. And an example that is really very current today is the global stocktake. It was mentioning earlier this week water and water-related ecosystems. This has been dropped again, so please, all of us, push for it. Also nature-based solutions. Peatland restorations are a nature-based solution that can really help us. And we tend to focus on the amazing fact of these huge emissions, but the positive side of it is that we know how to address and curb these. We can stop this. And then we have huge emission reductions. Of course, communities are very important to help shape and adopt new ways of land management. And in many areas, these are actually not new ways of land management, but reverting back to traditional knowledge and practices that have been working for centuries. Then short and long-term finance. I've put a couple of things here in bullets because we really need a mix of options. Wet land use, paludiculture that has been mentioned. That means using crops that are able to cope with high water levels. And really, normal crops that are not able to cope with it, that need drainage, don't do it really well on peat soils. So these are not really productive lands that we are putting our palm oil or forests on. So let's use crops that are able to cope with these high water levels. Then other ways to reduce emissions. Adopting best practices for grazing management, for example. We've been working in Mongolia, transferring knowledge to Peru, in Ruurgai, where we have been reducing grazing pressure, fencing off areas that need protection, and that really leads to emission reductions. Of course, when you have healthy peatlands, they will help us filter pollutants, filter water, help water quality, which is interesting also for businesses that depend on clean water. They have a sponge function. In Europe, we are initiating projects that help restore peatlands to buffer water in times of flood, but also release water in times of drought, which is really also key. It prevents flooding. And of course, fire and haze prevention. Once you drain peatlands, the dry organic matter is just ready to burn. And this burning is going deep if a peat is very deep in places. And then the fire can just go on and on. So it's not actually forest fire that we see often, it's peatland fire. And that is also causing subsidence. The soil is sinking. Even in the Netherlands, we know that for years. We are 7 meters below sea level and we're still sinking centimeters per year. It's incredible. Why don't we just stop that? On a positive note, if you combine all these actions at landscape level, blend investments by governments, by farmers, private sector, and link each other in these landscape enterprise networks that are emerging in some places, then we can really make it work. And I think that's also a challenge to all of us in this room. Let's connect the pieces of the puzzle and reduce these emissions.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for those nice examples. And I think let's make this a little bit dynamic and reach out to the audience, for questions, but also interventions on what you're doing. We have a bunch of country representatives here who are doing active work on peatlands. So please, let's open this up a bit for discussion. I see a hand raised in the back. Just please say who you are and if it's a question, to who it's directed. Well, we've got many people online and they want to hear you too, so.
While we are waiting, I forgot to announce our publication, Investing in Peatlands, which is being launched 18th of January. It's on the screen.
Yeah,
so
very nice. Thank you.
Join us with Landscape Finance Lab and others.
Great.
Thanks. Okay, Martin Zimmer. I'm a mangrove ecologist at the Wetlands Centre for Tropical Marine Research in Bremen, Germany, and we partly work on mangrove restoration, so I know it's not easy. And I can imagine that it's not trivial to re-wetten a peatland and then be successful in making this a healthy, restored peatland again. Do we have any numbers of the percentage of peatland area that is actually considered restorable?
Do we have an answer? I see it.
I wanted to ask her first.
She's jumping out of her seat. Please, go.
restorability is a matter of money you invest in a way. I mean, what do we have in mind? Generally, I would say almost all peatlands are restorable if you really put an effort into it. So I would say close to 100%, and we have to go for it. And we have to find out for every single specific site how far we can go, because we only need it with a good hydrological model for the specific site and with really practical experience. And then, of course, we have regions around the world where we face water scarcity, but often it's not that the total amount is decreasing, but the distribution over the year. And then we really need to have a smart way of keeping the water back. And peatlands, I mean, healthy peatlands are self-regulating systems. They can keep the water, they can act like sponges, so we can use them actually to keep them wet. And I would rather not lead a large, lengthy, we had the point already with Femke that I did not put the IPCC forward to lose time, but I think at the same time we need to think about an update after 10 years, but generally we should not wait for such studies, and we should also not invest too much in studies about restorability of peatlands.
Thanks. Yes, in the back there, yes.
Hello, my name is Laura, I'm from Argentina. We have Andean wetlands in Argentina who are very threatened because of lithium mining in the name of an energy transition. So it was very positive to hear all your insights and the previous panel as well, because we have many indigenous communities living in these ecosystems whose human rights are being breached because in order to promote lithium mining. So we think that a real good way to protect them as well is to raise awareness on the environmental contributions they bring regarding the capture of carbon dioxide and the degradation releasing those greenhouse gases and also methane. So we need to bring this message also of the role, the key role they have in adaptation for these communities in the context of climate change. So in the context of this conference, we need for these discussions to tackle the real problem here, that is that this model of energy transition is pushing for critical minerals in this case that degrade these ecosystems in order to maintain a model of hyperconsumption. So it's not a real transition. We need a social and ecological transition that values all of these contributions and that preserves these ecosystems that are key to tackle climate change. Yes. And we are degrading them instead of protecting ecosystems that naturally bring these possibilities. Yeah. So that's all I want to add. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, and including this relationship between the sectors that we're dealing with, and indeed this idea of the deep transformational change that is urgently needed as we see. Thank you for the example from Argentina. Yeah, maybe somebody in, and then we get back to you. Yes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is River Nail. I'm a student at Austin College, and I was just wondering if there's any irreversible damage that comes from draining the peatlands initially, and how non-damaged peatlands compare to re-wetted peatlands. Thank you.
There's probably a bunch of people in the audience and up here who can answer that, so who wants to?
Yeah, just to get started, in some cases peatlands are lost to the extent that they're no longer present, so it depends also on the depth of the peat. When you compare peatlands that are intact and functioning, they're a net sink, but if they're drained, then they're releasing greenhouse gases, so that's very important. But upon re-wetting, that function of being a net sink is going to be restored. So there's always a benefit, and also the sponge function. So that is, in that sense, reversible. You can reverse the damage.
Great. Yeah. Yes, now to you.
Hi, my name's Josh Weinberg. I'm with the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation. I have two questions. One is sort of a question about the vulnerability to climate change and the resilience of peatlands, and sort of how you're doing that assessment and how we can know more, sort of speak about that. And then second, I wanted to actually return to the question the moderator was asking in the first session. essentially about the conflicts, you know, because I think and give this set of panelists a chance to answer that question. Because with the scale of sort of the solution that peatlands are offering, the fact that they're not in the GST, these things, there's something more than sort of information and studies I feel is missing. So I'd be very interested to hear like what you think the actual conflicts are and barriers that we might be able to do to overcome them.
Should we take another one while we're thinking?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, the presenters. In fact, I don't have any question, but I want to share our experience to rejuvenate our peatlands. I'm Zakir, a farmer from Bangladesh. Our policy doesn't permit to restore the peatland or to conserve the peatland, and it's not in their radar yet. But we don't have any conflict with cropping system, but we do have conflict with fisheries. So they surrounded the peatlands in big places and they culture the fish there. So the problem happens in two ways. The water flows to the river through the peatlands and comes from the river to our villages or to our community. So when they put the barrier in between, the risk from flood and other disaster cyclone, it increases. So we try to remove the barriers, convincing the owners of the fisheries so that they can put the net system instead of the mud bend. So this way, and we also encourage the community to culture the local indigenous fishes. So it is something local fish sanctuary. And it is quite profitable, it has a higher premium, so economically they don't lose. And the other point is that we have floating agricultural system there. So we do the floating agriculture there. So we don't have any conflict with other stakeholders rather than the state party. So we are in line with convincing them to come to our system so that we can rejuvenate the whole system. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, would you like to?
Yes, I think conflicts are real. And in Uganda, we have a very fast-growing population, which is a problem in itself. But the biggest threat we are seeing is actually from some industrialists who have actually identified the biomass in the peat as one of the sources of energy for their processes. And we have had to engage with them and make them understand that that thing they think is source of energy has a serious ecological services it is providing to the environment. We have also integrated anything to do with peatland into the National Environmental Impact Assessment Protocol so that it is protected. And we have also put it now as part of the wetland management strategy, and we are specifically doing a law that is going to address the issue of wetlands and peatlands so that there is adequate protection, so it is not exploited for selfish reasons. So conflict is real and can be quite damaging.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's right. Yeah. Yes, please.
Well, talking about conflicts in Germany, the situation is a little bit different because we are basically talking about re-wetting peatlands. So, and we have basically two different scenarios. If you want to re-wet a peatland that's in a protected area, is owned by a foundation like ours, it's a completely different game than if we talk about peatland that is in use in agriculture or forestry. We as a foundation, we don't live from a business case in the land, we are mission driven, but the farmer on the land, he needs the money from the land. So where the conflict comes from is we need more business cases for farmers on peatlands that we are trying to get back to peatland, we get it back wet. And that's why I mentioned the question of paludiculture. We know a lot of crops that can grow in these areas, but we do not have the business cases for it. We don't have the amount of materials coming from peatlands, so therefore the logistics and the business cases do not fit yet. There are a lot of interesting projects coming up in Germany using products from peatlands for the construction business, using it in different other processes, but we do not have the big amounts of it, so therefore it's more on a small scale, but we need to get it scaled up so that it really works and that it is a business case that's usable for farmers in Germany. And that's what's going on in the debate on Germany. How do we provide easy business models for the owner of those lands so that they can profit and we can still go on rewetting those areas so that nature and climate can profit as well.
Thank you. Yes, Pakaskari. We've been waiting for you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time allowing me to speak here. Basically, first of all, I would like to thank to the speaker for inviting us to be a part of the puzzle. Yes, we do part of the puzzle. We'll try to contribute, of course, in the global term. And thank you for the long-term colleagues here, maybe from international institutions like FAO, like Wetlands, GPI, also many institutions which has been supporting Indonesia particularly, also from some other countries, so thank you very much for that. Even though that, we still need some, because the challenge is quite big. For the example, just to share with you Indonesian experience, we have 41 million people who live in the peatland area. Huge challenge. 41 million, more than population of Malaysia and Singapore, if we are comparing with the two countries. And also that many areas has been drained. If the question is how much is that we have restored our peatland, because it's has been degraded. Right now that we have restored in the concession area 3.7 million hectares. We restore the water. We put canal blocking. We prevent the water coming out. For the community area, it's about 1 million hectares. So it's a huge effort that has been done so far, even though that still needs some support, because to do the restoration, the money is needed almost 10 times than if we do make the canals. But to do the canal blocking, huge money that is needed. Now we have put that effort so far. And then regarding the conflict, if I may share with you that the challenge that we have so far, how to, basically that we have to talk each other, sharing, listening each other. Because the community, basically that they are maybe poor people, but they would like to earn for their life, so they do the burning. So basically that's the idea before. That's why we use in our term that we use 4 approaches, basic approaches to do the restoration. The first one was so-called the rewetting. We bring back and preserve the water. The second one is we do the rehabilitation of vegetation. We put and bring back the vegetation. And then the third one, we have to improve the local community livelihood. Otherwise, we do not talk about the conservation if the people still hungry. No, we cannot do so. And luckily that now almost 1,000 villages that we have done the intervention through these approaches. And the last one, of course, that we have to do the law enforcement. Because otherwise we have done this much, but still some violation of the peatland itself. So yeah, that's from our experience. That's why that if we compare to the El Nino in 2019, within this year the El Nino is much longer than 2019. But if we talk about the burnt area, is about 38% comparing to 2019. And most of them not in the peatland area anymore, but in the mineral soil. But still a huge challenge that we are facing right now. So that's why that we need also the support from international community. Because the peatland is not just for Indonesia, but also for the globe. Because we regulate the climate change. So that I ask support each other. Regarding the policy and regulation, we have now at least 36 regulation from X until the guidelines. so that we are happy to share with all of you if it's needed, particularly from colleagues from ASEAN countries or the tropical peatlands, because maybe it's quite similar. I mean, how the formation of the peatland itself. Yes, we need to share the knowledge, of course, from the northern part of the world also. Maybe you may share with our country regarding how to do the management. But anyway, thank you everybody for a great effort. And I do believe that everybody here has their contribution to the peatland management. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Pak Askari. Yes.
Hello?
Please, and then in the back.
Hello?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Alex, thank you so much for such a unique event. It's a unique opportunity to see such awesome slide packs. My name is Yuri Fursay, I'm from Russia. So this year become very saga for the wet and drain peatland in Russia. Carbon market is actively growing, legislation developed and adopted, and national methodology of wet and drain peatland successfully developed and adopted in Russia. And I would like to invite you to our roundtable, which will be tomorrow in Pavilion 18, where we are going to present the national methodology of wet and drain peatland in Russia in temperate climate condition. And we are going to also discuss the Russia potential. We see a lot of unique data which were provided by Francisca. Thank you so much. We'll be really happy to see you. You may join offline and online. If you join offline, it would be great. We may discuss it by face-to-face. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Hi, just a brief comment to support what has just been said. My name is Yelena. I'm a doctor in law. I did my PhD in Belgium and Netherlands, but now I'm an expert on climate change solutions, nature-based climate change solutions in the Russian Federation. And just to follow up what my colleague has just said, we already implemented and did research on peatlands revetting, and at least one first project on peatland revetting is ongoing. It's going to start next year in 2024. A large business corporation, Rusal, which is an aluminium producer, is really interested in implementing and developing this kind of project, and the methodology which has been developed in the country this year. It will be for the first time implemented hopefully next year. This is what we are going to talk about tomorrow. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. We have a hand in the back who's been patiently waiting.
Yeah, thanks. Lad Canal Bank Information Center in Washington, D.C. I want to focus a little bit more on the finance side, actually following, I think, on Andrea, who commented about the situation in Argentina. You have IFC and IDB Invest that are supporting the lithium mining in those areas. Of course, people do need lithium, but there may be other ways to get it. And I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts, in particular, on how multilateral finance could be contributing more to wetlands preservation and restoration, and addressing those conflicts too.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah, that's right. Would you like to? Yeah, you've got your upcoming publication. Yeah. What does it say?
Well, it doesn't talk about this, but we do have a position paper on lithium mining, driven by our Argentina office. So I think we need to really liaise on that. And it's of course a huge challenge. It's a trade-off. Do we need these materials also to move forward with renewable energy? Yet at the same time, if they're situated in peatland areas or other very valuable areas, then what to do? In some cases, it's inevitable to explore vulnerable areas, but there are always ways to minimize negative impacts. And in some cases, if the area is that vulnerable, or if the peatlands are so important in terms of preventing emissions, that different kinds of trade-offs need to be made. And I think case by case decision making is necessary there, but weighing all the important information that is out there, and that's currently not happening because peatlands are often not even recognized.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I think on the side of finance, or financing, you see, the multilateral development banks have focused primarily, the focus in the past has been on infrastructure. Like in my country, it is just, I think, last year, since we became independent, that we got consideration for funding for the natural resources, that is environment. And it came about also because of the refugees, because we are hosting more than 1.5 million refugees from across, from our neighborhood. And they have had drastic impact on our natural vegetation. So now a component was put in to take care of the environment. But I think with the onset of the carbon trading potential, which is embedded in wetland, I think these peatlands are now going to be a little bit more attractive. And I think given that they offer better storage compared to forests, it should therefore also become attractive. And hopefully we will see a lot more engagement. In Uganda, we are actually integrating it into our carbon mechanism so that we put it as one of the ingredients in our mechanism. So yes, it requires a lot more support, and there's a lot of money that is needed, especially on our side, to understand the age, to understand the quantity, to understand what gases are there, the fluxes, etc., and we'll therefore be able to use it effectively as part of the carbon mechanism.
Great, thank you for that.
In terms of responding to that as well, we are really working actively on these carbon methodologies, and there are several carbon standards out there that are also being piloted at national level. For example, in the UK, there's the IUCN Peatland Code, there's the Morse Future Code, that's in Germany. We are now, as Wetlands International, also working with Vera to look at tropical peatland methodologies. And also there, that's really an area to connect the dots and see how we can learn from each other and use that, what is available, to then channel also funding to where it's most needed, and specifically also to the communities that need to find an alternative way to make their living.
Great, thank you. This has been nice. It's been nice to have a bit of a discussion. And I think, you know, we're still at the stage, this community is convinced. I mean, we know the importance of peatlands for climate action. But if you go out there, I mean, peatlands are still, nobody's really still talking about this. And I have to say the Global Peatlands Initiative has done a tremendous job in starting to really elevate and give peatlands the recognition that they deserve, and how much more there is, in fact, to still do on monitoring, on mapping, on getting peatlands into NDCs. I mean, I think we all have very clear work cut out for us, taking these best practices that we've been hearing from around the room and elevating those also, so that other countries, countries can learn from each other in terms of peatland management. And so I think it's pretty clear. This is the group, and there's quite a bit of work to do moving forward. Maybe I'd like to just end with maybe a last statement for each of you, and then maybe even the two who, and maybe even our previous monitor. One thing that you think is critical as a next step as we move past COP28. Maybe I start with our distinguished colleague from Uganda. Yeah. Just one thing.
Yeah, I think one thing that we look forward to is all the stakeholders coming together and working to make sure that, like in the case of Uganda, that the strategies, the policies, and the laws we have around peatland is fit for purpose, and helping the community to understand the value which is embedded in those peatlands. And the academia have a big role to play in this particular exercise, and we look forward to collaborating with Wetlands International and any other person out there who could come and help us so that we safeguard this very critical resource for humanity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I think the important thing is get going. Start locally, get the people involved and explain why biodiversity and climate protection are important and are a possibility to profit in your community.
Great.
Well, yes, you've said it all, of course. Let's go for it and let's do it together. But I also really want to commend the government's delegations that are here, because it's really courageous. If you're there on the screen with these huge emissions and you then stand up here and explain how you've been trying to tackle this, let's now also make it visible in NDCs and in these pledges so that we can all actually also do our part and channel some funding that is much needed. So applause for the people in the room, and let's spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And our global policy experts and scientists from the floor, your takeaways, your next step.
Yeah, just adding to it, I think training and capacity building is really very much needed. We need people, because it's not starting to do it by itself. We need people that are trained and have the capacity to do it. And then we need it in all countries. We have peatlands in all countries of the world, and we should not use nature-based solutions which give us so much as a reason not to phase out fossil fuels entirely.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
And I second that. But my dream, my hope, as you said, is to see peatlands more centrally in all 3 Rio conventions.
Yeah, yeah.
This is really, peatlands are a treasure that we've not been taking care of. And it's time that we realize for biodiversity, for land use, and for climate, it brings tons of benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And
I'd
the final word from
I'd
Han.
like to underline that, yes. Local action is needed, and it's happening, so as we see, but I think, given all the figures, it's so convincing, we really need a peatland push on a global scale.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And so with that, we thank the organizers of the event and our partners through the Global Peatlands Initiative, all of the panelists. Let's do it. We have our concrete next steps, so let's work together and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.